"We are just getting started." Those are the famous last words of the Iranian regime following its breaking of the ceasefire with the US on May 4th. Iranian attacks in the Strait of Hormuz have sent shockwaves around the world, and peace is over. But Iran bit off more than it could chew. The regime ended the ceasefire and immediately regretted it, as the US just utterly humiliated Iran's navy to the point where its boats all became submarines. The US sent in the choppers. Iran felt the pain. On May 4th, the War Zone, or TWZ, alongside other outlets, broke the news that Operation Epic Fury seems to have restarted. The US deployed AH-64 Apache and MH-60 Seahawk helicopters into the Strait of Hormuz, where they destroyed small boats operated by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC. How many boats were destroyed seems to have become a matter of debate. TWZ says that it's 6. CBS News reported on May 5th that the actual number is 7. But the reality is that the numbers matter less than what all of this represents. The ceasefire has been broken, and that could change everything about the future of Iran. The US says that it has more than enough reasons to send its choppers back into the mix. The IRGC's small boats were threatening commercial shipping in and around the Strait of Hormuz. Plus, US Navy Admiral Brad Cooper, who is the head of US Central Command, has also suggested that Iran targeted US Navy warships. Stick with us because we'll be digging deeper into the potential trigger points for this renewed round of conflict, but first, Cooper has made it very clear that Iran faces some serious problems if it's looking to ignite a new fight in the Strait of Hormuz. We have an enormous amount of capability and firepower concentrated in and around the strait, including AH-64 Apache and MH-60 Seahawk helicopters used just this morning to eliminate 6 Iranian small boats threatening commercial shipping, Cooper said when reporting on the latest US strikes. Then he delivered this warning: much worse will come if Iran doesn't straighten up and fly right. We also have A-10s, F-15, F-16, FA-18, F-35, EA-18 Growlers, RC-135s, KC-46s, and KC-135 fixed-wing aircraft, and numerous US warships including destroyers, 2 carrier strike groups, an amphibious readiness group, and a marine expeditionary unit, Cooper explained. Right now, we're at the tipping point. The US destroying 6 or 7 IRGC small boats could plunge Iran back into experiencing the worst that Operation Epic Fury delivers to the regime. Or, as Cooper suggests, with the listing of American military capability in the Gulf region, it could be a one-time action that serves as a reminder to Iran that it's better to talk than to fight. As IRGC small boats have been turned into unintentional submarines by America's furious response, the specific aircraft that the US used are also noteworthy. One could argue that the Apache and Seahawk are on the lower level of the air power that the US could have deployed. However, the reality is that these are both choppers that are primed to deal with the small boat problem that Iran presents in the Strait of Hormuz and the surrounding waters. The IRGC's small boat threat has been a problem since the beginning of Operation Epic Fury. Even as Iran's main naval threat was debilitated, with warship after warship going down to American strikes, the asymmetric threat posed by the small boats remain. Quick, difficult to detect on the water, and easy to deploy from even the most rudimentary of ports, these small boats are dangerous and, more to the point, numerous. The Gulf International Forum notes that the IRGC has 20,000 personnel in its naval branch, which is 2,000 more than Iran has in its conventional navy. Of these 20,000, around 5,000 are specialized marine troops that are deploying along with the fast boats. As for the boats themselves, they include Tondar-class fast attack ships, C-14-class missile boats, and a host of other light vessels that are typically equipped with launchers that can fire short-range cruise missiles. The strategy is simple. The fast boat speeds toward a target. Once there, it unleashes its missiles before departing. It's not really about the damage for Iran, though it certainly has caused plenty. It's about the threat. As long as commercial shipping companies know that the IRGC's boats are on the prowl, there is a massive risk to trying to sail a ship through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's regime has been able to achieve a lot using very little, as these small boats have played a key role in allowing it to create the Hormuz blockade that is now such a massive problem for the world's energy industries. Some may deride the IRGC's boats as the Mosquito fleet, but the IRGC doesn't care. With its small boats along with drones, the IRGC is able to conduct guerrilla warfare in a key sea lane through which 20% of the world's oil supply flows during peacetime. So the small boats are major threats. The Apache and the Seahawk are the US counter to these threats. Both choppers, along with the A-10 Warthogs that the US has also deployed in the Strait of Hormuz, are able to respond quickly to small boat attacks and pack more than enough firepower to take these boats out. The IRGC has sacrificed armor and in-vessel air defenses for agility. American chopper and A-10 pilots have been training extensively for around 2 decades to fly the sorts of counterboat missions that have just resulted in around half a dozen of the IRGC's ships being sunk. The Seahawks in particular have plenty of experience in this department. The National Interest reports that they have previously been used to take out small boats owned by the Houthis in the Red Sea. That group of militants is backed by Iran, and what we're now seeing in the Strait of Hormuz is very similar to what the Houthis have been doing off and on in the Red Sea for several years. Armed choppers in general are the perfect choice for this sort of task. They can take off quickly from land or from warships stationed at sea. They can also station themselves close to suspected threat areas such as the Hormuz transit paths, which further reduces the time needed for a chopper to respond to and reach a small boat threat. Add anti-ship munitions such as the new laser-guided Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System 2 rockets that are being loaded into America's choppers and aircraft, and you get aerial weapons that can deal with entire fast boat swarms. The fighter jets and more advanced airframes aren't needed. They'll be used for strikes in Iran itself if what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz right now ends up being the catalyst that reignites Operation Epic Fury. Iran isn't happy about any of this. The BBC reports that Iranian state media has already started to dispute the US claims that it struck so many of the IRGC's small boats. Instead, Iran says all the US managed to achieve was the destruction of a pair of small civilian cargo vessels, which led to the deaths of 5 civilians. How true these claims are remains to be seen. The claims come from Iran's state broadcaster IRIB, which reports that an anonymous Iranian military commander says that Tehran's regime launched its own investigation into the US attacks on IRGC vessels to come to its conclusion. The US military hasn't responded to these accusations, Al Jazeera reports. We would be remiss if we didn't point out that Iran's regime and state media have more than enough incentive to spread the propaganda message that the US is attacking commercial ships rather than IRGC small boats. Plus, one of the other reasons why the IRGC uses small boats is that they are difficult to differentiate from more innocent craft. It's all about plausible deniability, and Iran might be trying to paint the loss of some of its Hormuz blockers as something that it isn't. Tensions are rising close to the point where the entire Iran war ceasefire could break down. The situation in the Strait of Hormuz has escalated. But the question has to be asked, why did the US attack the IRGC's small boats in the first place? Iran is trying to position itself as the innocent victim in all of this, but the truth is far different. But before we explore what led to all of this happening in the Strait, this is a quick reminder that you are watching The Military Show. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect time to hit the button so you never miss uploads from our channel. Now, Iran wants you to think that the US just broke the ceasefire for no reason. It didn't. What really happened is that Iran struck first, and it's all because the regime wasn't happy that the US had announced that it was looking to take further steps to make transit through the Strait of Hormuz safe for commercial ships. On May 3rd, US President Donald Trump took to his Truth Social platform to announce what the US intends to do to follow up on the Hormuz blockade. Trump declared that countries from all over the world, most of which aren't involved in the Middle East conflict, have been coming to the US asking for America to help them free up their ships in the Strait of Hormuz. For the good of Iran, the Middle East, and the United States, we have told these countries that we will guide their ships safely out of these restricted waterways so that they can freely and ably get on with their business, Trump declared. The US president positioned the move as a humanitarian gesture for all involved, including Iran, and just like that, a new operation was announced. Project Freedom was about to go live. Iran wasn't happy about it. Despite Trump's claims that this new project would help Iran as much as it does any other nation, the Iranian regime was quick to fire back with claims that it still controls the Strait of Hormuz. The US, Iran says, has no right to provide any sort of escorts or help to merchant vessels that are subject to the Iranian blockade. The US certainly can't do that on its own, as Iranian Major General Ali Abdullah claimed when he said that any safe passage provided through Hormuz must be coordinated alongside Iran under all circumstances, the BBC reports. Others in Iran were also quick to criticize Project Freedom. Iranian lawmaker Ibrahim Azizi claimed that the US risked violating the ceasefire with this new project, adding that the Strait of Hormuz is not a place for rhetoric and that the Gulf region would not be managed by Trump's delusional posts. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi piled on the criticism, claiming that Project Freedom is Project Deadlock in a post on X. So that's a no on Project Freedom from Iran. But what happened next caught everybody off guard. Seemingly not satisfied with registering its displeasure about Trump's new proposal, Iran's regime decided to get ahead of what it views as the potential breaking of the ceasefire by breaking the ceasefire. On May 4th, both South Korea and the United Arab Emirates reported that their merchant ships had been attacked in the Strait of Hormuz. The UAE also reported that Iran has attacked its oil port in Fujairah, causing a fire. Suddenly, the reason for American Apaches and Seahawks targeting the IRGC's small boats becomes clear. This was no random warning shot delivered to force Iran to back down on its anger about Project Freedom. It was a response, revenge, an act by the US to show Iran that it will respond to any IRGC attacks in the Strait of Hormuz so quickly that the boats launching those attacks will be sent to the bottom of the sea before they ever have a chance to cause serious damage. And now the entire world is on tenterhooks. Are we seeing the reignition of a conflict or a blip on the path to peace? America's response to the Iranian regime's aggression suggests that Project Freedom isn't going away anytime soon. As we saw from Cooper's comments, far from backing down, the US has reiterated that it already has an extensive military presence in the Gulf, including the choppers it's already using, fighter jets and warships. Having said that, the US is also being cagey about precisely what Project Freedom is doing in the wake of Iran's attacks and the initial American response. When asked about whether the US is now protecting ports in the UAE as part of Project Freedom, Cooper said, "I don't want to give the details of what we're protecting and what we're not. I wouldn't want to tip our hand on that. But in the case of the Fujairah attack, I'd really refer to the UAE on that." So there's not a lot coming out of the US military brass. However, Trump may have provided some indication of where he sees Project Freedom going. In his May 4th Truth Social declaration about the US destroying 7 of the IRGC's small boats, Trump also made some interesting mentions of South Korea. Iran has taken some shots at unrelated nations with respect to the ship movement Project Freedom, including a South Korean cargo ship. Perhaps it's time for South Korea to come and join the mission. This is an interesting comment. Though we can only speculate at this point, it indicates that the US might be looking to spearhead a multinational mission in the Strait of Hormuz, rather than make itself solely responsible for ensuring the safety of commercial ships in the waterway. Could we be seeing the start of an alliance to reopen Hormuz? That remains to be seen, and it's worth noting that The Independent reported on May 5th that South Korea was reviewing the possibility of joining Project Freedom. However, that's been tempered by the fact that South Korea is also investigating the cause of the fire on the cargo vessel the IRGC reportedly struck, as it hasn't yet officially confirmed that the blaze was caused by external factors. As is so often the case with the Gulf conflict, we can never quite tell what's going to happen next. That's as much the case for the ceasefire as it is for Project Freedom. You would think that Iran attacking cargo vessels and oil ports, along with the US responding by sinking IRGC small boats, would mean that the ceasefire is over. Maybe it is, but maybe it isn't. As CNN reported on May 5th, Trump has made grand claims about how Iranian forces would be blown off the face of the earth if they target US ships in the Gulf region. However, he has just stopped short of proclaiming the ceasefire to be over. White House reporter Jonathan Karl also notes that the end to the ceasefire hasn't quite happened yet, as Trump stopped short of stating that Operation Epic Fury is back in full swing during a May 4th phone conversation where he explained what had happened to the Emirati and South Korean merchant ships. It's also cagey, but that's really what you can expect with two nations that are trying to navigate their way through peace talks while actively threatening one another. So when it comes to the Iran conflict, what do we know for certain? We know that US destroyers are in the Strait of Hormuz. CENTCOM has confirmed that in a May 4th X-post, where it said, US Navy-guided missile destroyers are currently operating in the Arabian Gulf after transiting the Strait of Hormuz in support of Project Freedom. The same post notes that a pair of US merchant vessels had made it through Hormuz under Project Freedom. However, Cooper adds that the US warships may be present, but they aren't providing specific escorts. If I just describe this overall, if you're escorting a ship, you're playing kind of one-on-one. I think we have a much better defensive arrangement in this process, where we have multiple layers that include ships, helicopters, aircraft, airborne early warning, electronic warfare. We have a much broader defensive package than you would have ever had if you were just escorting. That gives us some more insight into how Project Freedom is going to take shape. It won't just be US warships that deal with the IRGC. It will also be aircraft and helicopters that those warships carry, just as the IRGC's small boat captains discovered. In the meantime, Trump is delivering warnings, and the US military buildup in the Gulf seems to be restarting. They have no navy, they have no air force, they have no anti-aircraft equipment, they have no radar, they have no nothing, they have no leaders actually. The leaders happen to be gone also, Trump said of Iran during a May 4th speech. That's a none-too-subtle reminder to Iran that the US has devastated the country's military over the last few months. Trump also claimed during an interview with Fox News that the US has more weapons and ammunition at a much higher grade than we had before. It's unclear whether Trump is comparing the US military of today to that of yesteryear, or if he's claiming that more hardware has been shipped to the Gulf. Either way, it's another threat. Back down now, Iran, or half a dozen small boats destroyed and cruise missiles being intercepted by American forces will just be the start. It also appears that the US is consulting with Israel to determine its next steps. That's according to Israel HIOM, which claims that 3 sources familiar with the matter claim that the two countries are holding feverish consultations on how to respond and assist their loyal ally, seemingly in reference to the UAE. Options being discussed reportedly include targeted strikes against Iranian launchers and other military targets that threaten the Strait of Hormuz, along with a possible attack against an Iranian energy facility as a direct response to Iran's strike at Fujairah. As for Iran, it has already delivered the warning we used to open the video. We're just getting started. IRGC has taken a slightly more diplomatic approach, stating on X that events in Hormuz make clear that there's no military solution to a political crisis, as he warned the US against being dragged back into a quagmire by ill-wishers, a subtle jab at Israel perhaps. Either way, it seems that IRGC is trying to steer the situation back to the table rather than Hormuz, though how well that will work when the US doesn't seem like it's backing down on Project Freedom and the IRGC is once again attacking merchant ships in the Gulf remains to be seen. What we've just seen could be a blip on the path to peace, or the catalyst that leads to Operation Epic Fury being relaunched. The next couple of days will be crucial. For now, half a dozen sunken small boats serve as evidence that the US is ready for the next round, if needed. And if Operation Epic Fury does restart, there is one unexpected nation that could be a huge difference maker in the Strait of Hormuz. Ukraine is ready to do something huge to reopen the strait, and not even the US saw it coming. Find out more by watching our video. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to The Military Show so you don't miss any of our coverage of the latest developments in the Gulf. And thank you as always for watching.